everyone. Welcome back to Brothers Trippin, podcast where three brothers in three states talk about sports, culture, whatever else makes it into the group chat. I'm Aaron here in Kentucky, joined by Josh in New Mexico, and hopefully at some point Andrew from Utah. We seem to have lost him. I'm going to go ahead and press.
No. That's all good.
All right. Today's episode is packed. We're going to be talking about Wrexham AFC, and Welcome to Wrexham, the docuseries. We're going to talk about the interview that Diego Pavia, the Vanderbilt quarterback, did on the Bussin with the Boys podcast. We have a new segment we're going to highlight starting this week called Playing It Forward. We'll get into that in a minute, and then we're going to dive into the House versus NCAA settlement and how that is going to reshape college sports. As always, we're brought to you by HelmetNation. More on them later in the show. So we're going to go ahead and get into it, me and Josh, and hopefully Andrew will be able to make an appearance at some point.
He's gone.
He's gone. Well, Andrew, I don't know that he was going to have a whole lot to add to this particular segment anyway. So do you...
Yeah.
Do you kind of want to recap or discuss what you know or what your thoughts and everything are about, Wrexham, how you learned about it and, how much you follow it, things like that?
Yeah, it's just a fun show. I think that this documentary. Can you not hear that?
No, I could that time. Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's a totally fun show. I think I started looking into like how many celebrities have ownership in different sports teams, and it's a lot. Like there's celebrities that are invested into professional league, like NBA, NFL. It's a lot more than I realized. And I like this story. The only one that I thought kind of was similar in scope or sort of like the lower level of professional sports was Kelly Ripa. Her and I think it's her husband are invested in one that's in Italy. It was almost like they were trying to do the same thing. I don't know when they did it compared to when like Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney invested in Wrexham, but I think it's a super cool experience for everybody. You can tell that like the people in Wrexham are completely different. Like it just feels like they've got a totally different outlook on life in general because of this and the role that the team plays in the community's existence. I think that's super cool. I think if it was anybody else, it just was the investors, anybody other than Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, I just don't think it would work. Like the documentary wouldn't be that good. They're just two dudes who are hilarious and it just works. And it seems like they're like real motivations. I'm sure, initially it's financial, of course, but you can tell that they really, it seems like anyway, maybe they're just good actors. I don't know. Personal investment and emotional investment in all of this is just as strong as the financial one. And so I love following it. I was never into soccer growing up ever, and I never played nothing. And since Will, my 10-year-old, he's gotten into soccer and he's played for the last few years, and he's starting to get into it more and more to where we're doing like extra practices, and he's joining these like strength and conditioning for soccer players camps that are just, like summertime stuff. Like my experience with soccer has just really kind of exploded. We watch Premier League games together Sunday mornings. We watch other MLS sometimes, and he knows about different players. He plays on his Xbox, he's playing FIFA World Soccer and stuff like that. So he knows all the players now, and it's just soccer in general has become a much bigger part of our life, and it's been like our own little bonding thing, just like Wrexham is to that whole town, and so
right.
It's a lot of fun. It's awesome. It's harder for us to get those games here. We don't watch. I haven't watched any of them live, but I've followed the team on Instagram and stuff like that
right.
to see how they're doing. It's pretty remarkable. I mean, it's nobody's done it what they've done,
no.
and what they're trying to do. And
right.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I would say that and this is like nitpicking. This isn't like a huge thing, but like the fact it's really like set off a bunch of the fans of like opponents, right? They're like, they hate them. They hate them even more than they did now. And it's like, you're just buying all of this crap. You're just buying all of these, promotions. And that's kind of true, but that's sort of the process.
And that's how English soccer works.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's a little bit, it's interesting because as I've started to learn more about it, there are teams where they come off, like in Premier League, like Man City, I think would be considered kind of like a LA Dodgers or the New York Yankees, where it's just your budget is through the roof, right? And you just buy your championships that way. Sure, I mean, you can do that, but then there are also teams where even though their salaries are still pretty dang high, you've got teams like Liverpool where it's a little bit more of a homegrown product that's been built over time, and so a lot of people love Liverpool, especially like Americans. They'll tend to gravitate towards a team like Liverpool before they will like a team like Man City. And it's been kind of funny to watch Will, as my son, as he's kind of gone through this sort of which team do I like first? Because he started out loving Man City because of De Bruyne was his favorite player. Well, De Bruyne is not coming back, and so now he's kind of like moved on to Liverpool just because of one of my PT school friends is a big Liverpool fan. But you can see how within Wrexham that would, like, if I was invested in some other team in that league, I'd be pissed. It's like the Dodgers versus the Cubs. Like, even though the Cubs have a big payroll, the Dodgers go out and spend $1 billion on two players and can almost seal up the World Series with that, despite how they're actually playing right now. But still, it's like if I was not a fan of Wrexham, and if I didn't have a man crush on Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, I'd be pissed. I'd hate him. I'd hate him way more than I did originally. And funny story is that when Heidi and I were first married, we were in Disneyland. We were actually in California Adventure, and this was back when the show The Mindy Project was really big. Rob McElhenney has a bit part in that show where he plays a character named Cousin Lou, and he's hilarious. And we saw him at California Adventure. This was back before like crowds were massive all year long. And Heidi saw him. She goes, he's from Mini Project. She didn't know his name. I didn't know who he was. I never watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And so I just kind of like, he was standing by himself and there was nobody else around. And I was like, hey, are you Cousin Lou? And he just kind of like ignored me. Such a dork for doing this. But I'm like, come on, dude, you're Cousin Lou. I know you're Cousin Lou. Just admit it. He finally was like, he's not looking at me. And I hear him go, wow, Cousin Lou, that's not usually the one that I get recognized for. And he's saying all this to himself. And then finally he looks up and he goes, yeah, that's me. And I was like, hey, well, that's awesome, dude. We love you as Cousin Lou. You do a great job. And then he was like, yeah, thanks, guys. And we went on our way. And so that's my like claim. That's my personal investment in Wrexham. It's been fascinating to watch their sort of metamorphosis through especially this most recent season, on how difficult it is and the challenges that they have for sustainable progress and growth. It's pretty fascinating. Anyway, that was a very long-winded way to say I like the show.
No, I have been fascinated like from way early on when I first heard about it. And so I started watching the docuseries and then immediately started following the team. And, I was sitting there thinking a while ago, like during what would have probably been season 1 of the docuseries or the documentary, like I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, these guys might get you out of the 5th tier. They might get you out of that league, but eventually you're going to have to find better guys because these guys aren't going to be good enough to play. So to me, that's been a fascinating thing to watch because Paul Mullen and a couple of those other guys have meant so much to the team. Yeah. And then this last season, as they were getting promoted again, those two guys didn't see the field for like the last third of the season. They didn't even, most of the time, they weren't even on the bench. And so that was wild to kind of see, given what they've done for the team overall. And so I'm sure, I'm 100% positive, because one of the other things I've loved about the show, is that, I've actually loved the fact that Ryan and Rob have been so focused on making sure that the club grows and the city grows with the club. So like they're, what do you call that? Like they're symbiotic and stuff. Yeah. And so like, I've loved the fact that they've been so focused on that through the whole thing. And so to me, that's like one of the coolest parts of the story. And they realize that guys are going to have to, you're going to have to keep getting better players and everything else. And it's weird to me that people can sit there and be like, they're calling them Disney FC.
I thought that was a hilarious episode.
I thought that was hilarious.
They just totally leaned into it. They're like,
right.
Yeah, and
exactly. They're like, what's your point?
Yeah.
But I I did love the fact, or I do find it hard to believe though that when you sit there and you look around, like Birmingham FC, who actually finished first in League One to get promoted up to the championship, like by like 15 or 20 points over Wrexham, who was second. They have Tom Brady and a like a hedge fund manager or something like that, who's a billionaire guy. And I'm like, guys, that's just, if you want to grow your team, that's what you're going to have to do, is find people who are willing to invest, build your team, because that's what it takes. So I don't really understand the criticism. I get what you're saying in terms of you don't like it because, but to me, it's more like sour grapes not liking, because it's like, why didn't they like my team and want to invest in my team?
Yeah,
you know?
sure. Yeah,
But,
I mean, it pisses me off when I look at the Cubs, and the Cubs have all the money in the world and they just don't spend. Now, I mean, like this year it's played out a little different than I certainly anticipated, but it's the same idea. Like, dude, you got the money, freaking spend it and go get some all-stars, like,
and
stop sitting on
hopefully
that cash,
maybe they'll do something at the All-Star or at the trade deadline. Hopefully they'll bring in a couple more people, because it'd be nice just piggybacking on your Cubs thing. But they've been, man, they keep winning. They keep blowing my mind. I don't know how they're, that series against Pittsburgh was bizarre to me. Like every game was a 1-game or 1-point win. And they didn't, I don't think anybody in any game scored more than 3 points at any point in time. I think 3-2 was one of the games. And then, it's like, that's crazy.
In baseball, nobody scores points.
Runs. My bad.
I'm just kidding. I had somebody correct me on
That's
that
fair.
once.
I sound like an idiot if I'm saying points.
I'm going to beat you. Yeah, I had a guy correct me on that once years ago. It was one of my best friends at the time, too. And I'm like, screw you. We're not friends anymore.
We may have lost Andrew for the night.
I know. What the heck is going on?
He sent me 2 messages. Let's see. Let's just lean into this and see what's going on. Nope, that's from before. He didn't send me anything. That's the original text.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't have connection tonight. That's weird. Anyway, so yeah, no, I love it. I'm enjoying I just watched the latest episode of the documentary this morning, and
I haven't seen that newest one yet, so I gotta watch that still. It's been also interesting to see the sort of diverting paths of the girls' team versus the men's team. Like the girls' team started to have some serious problems, and I would guess that it might be harder to find elevated athletes similar to the way they've done it with the men. And maybe I've wondered at some point with the men's team, like, is there going to come a point where you've got to get a different gaffer, you know what I mean? Different coach, because he doesn't have experience at the top leagues as far as I can remember. He does?
Parkinson? Yeah.
I can't remember.
He's at least been in the championship. I know that. Like I remember he's at least been in the championship league, because they brought him down a number of levels to when they first hired him. And so he's been around, and some of those guys, like the bald head guy who was, kind of one of the front office guys. He was one of the first ones they hired.
Yeah.
He's been heavily involved in all levels, even the top level of the EPL and stuff. They've Sean, the guy's name is Sean.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about.
So they've dove deep to bring in some talent, so it's impressive. And that new guy they hired as the CEO or whatever, he's, wow, what an impressive background he's got. So yeah, I think they're, every year I've thought, okay, well, they're going to have to level up. They're going to have to work. Yeah. They're going to, every year I think that. So I don't necessarily think they're going to do like 4 in a row. That would be insane to make that jump. But I do think that they could eventually reach the Premier League.
Yeah, that would be sick. That'd be amazing.
Because the other thing about it is they keep talking about the money part of it, and we'll try to wrap this up so we don't go too long tonight. But the other thing about it is they constantly have the talks about spending the money and things like that. But I'm like, okay, but every time you gamble and spend the money, if it works out for you, you grow what you're making exponentially. Yeah. So it's not a 1-for-1. You're going to spend that money, but your return on that investment, even if that investment is steep right now, is going to be 5 to 10 times more than what you're getting right now. So when you spend it and you hit and you're taking it to the next level, all you're doing is you're like growing your investment. And so then you've got more money to spend, so.
Yeah, there's upsides and downsides to that, right? Like they need to expand the stadium for sure, because
For sure.
ticket sales have a limit, like
Yes, absolutely.
you've got a limited number of seats. And so what ends up happening is that your ticket prices go way up.
Right.
And now, like, some of the original fans who have been there for years may not be able to afford to go.
Right.
That's a problem.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want to be like, they run the risk of sort of being a victim of their own success in some
Right.
ways.
For sure. Absolutely.
And that's, I think, what's been covered a lot in this season is talking about how do you grow the infrastructure to match so that it can be sustained, because you also, like, outside of the tickets, you're going to have to, your money's got to come from other sources. And so that's why they're doing all the trips to the US and, promotional kind of trips. Those all have an initial
and
big
they got
investment.
the investment from that billionaire medical devices family and stuff, so I mean, they got a lot to level up in order to keep going. So it's going to be interesting to watch, and I hope they just keep going with the docuseries for a while.
Yeah, I do too.
I am hoping that apparently his connection keeps dropping out. He just sent us a text.
We need some guy in the background sorting all this out, like most podcasts.
We need a producer at some point.
There we go.
So anyway, all right, well, let's move on here. So the next segment is brought to you by HelmetNation, your go-to source for officially licensed NFL and NCAA collectible helmets, from minis to full-size authentic Speedflex. Whether you're a fan decorating your man cave or a collector chasing that perfect piece, HelmetNation has your team. Best of all, you're supporting a veteran-owned small business. Check them out at HelmetNation.com and gear up today. Also, in the coming months, HelmetNation will be expanding their product line. So we will have a number of several thousand different products that we're going to be adding to the website that we're working on right now.
Give us a little bit of friggin' inside scoop on that.
So right now, we've started the process with one company. Sure. With one company, we're adding things like NFL, NCAA, Major League Baseball, like puzzles. Anything that has like your team on it. Like if they make it, we're going to have it on there for like puzzles, poker chips, dice, some baby toys, bottles, things like that.
Nice.
And what else? Like Jenga, they call it something else. It's like
block
some
tower
kind of
or something
but it's Jenga, only with your team logos all over the Jenga pieces and stuff. So it'll be things that are all football or helmet sport related that you can then.
Did I just drop off?
Get from the site. Did I lose you too, Josh? Oh, you froze. So it's just
Am I back?
Oh, there you are.
I don't know, man. I don't know what the deal is. This is a top-notch production we got going on here.
Yeah, it is. This is fantastic.
Man,
this is amazing.
Hilarious.
You were sitting there, and all of a sudden I realized your face hadn't moved in a while, and I was like, oh, okay.
I was just being very still.
All right. Well, I was hoping to get Andrew's opinion on this part of the podcast here. Just, I guess just for maybe we can come back and touch on this too in a couple of weeks if we can get Andrew's connection. But anyway, Diego Pavia was on Bussin with the Boys. They recorded it, I want to say about a week ago or so. And then it was released yesterday or something like that. For the two people that might listen to us, our girlfriends or wives or whatever, Diego Pavia is a quarterback for the Vanderbilt Commodores in the SEC college football. He's had an interesting journey to that job. He's a New Mexico kid, so from New Mexico.
Know that.
Yep, he played at New Mexico Military Institute, JUCO route. He had no offers in high school and walked on at NMMI and won the job there. And then from there, after 2 years, he won the JUCO national championship his second year. From there, he got he had a couple of offers. One of them was New Mexico State. So he chose that one. One was St. Francis, and the other one was
Nevada, wasn't it?
No, that was after he'd been at New Mexico State. It was Jackson State with Deion.
Yeah, Jackson State, yeah.
And so anyway, he chose New Mexico State, was there for a couple of years. They had a really good year 2 years ago. Young man that I coached in high school is a coach for New Mexico State. So he got to see that anyway. So they had a really good year. And so then he was looking, and I guess his OC was going to Vanderbilt. Went to Vanderbilt and wanted him to come. And then he was like, sounds like there was kind of a mess going on because Jerry Kill, the head coach in Mexico State, retired. Right. So then he decided he was going to go somewhere, and then he had committed to Nevada, but then the next day found out that Coach Kill was going to go to Vanderbilt and do something. And so then he ended up going with Coach Kill to Vanderbilt. So, it was an interesting podcast. He's definitely full of himself. He keeps claiming that Vanderbilt's going to win the national championship.
next year.
This season.
Yeah, this coming season.
Yes,
That's what I
this
meant.
coming season they're going to win the national championship. I mean, if I was going to bet any real money, I wouldn't bet that they would win the SEC division that they're in, or are they not in divisions anymore?
I don't know, but those are great odds. And whatever it is, you bet a buck on that and they
Right.
win it all.
You're going to win some
That's worth
money.
a buck.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. If you want to take a long shot, like
Yeah.
that's going to be how you do it. But yeah, he's definitely a little full of himself, a little full of the SEC, if you ask me. The Bussin boys I thought were funny in that they were bringing up like, hey, now that everybody can pay their players,
Yeah, exactly.
and stuff, then they, so
it's evened things out.
Yeah, exactly.
And in fact, it's shifted it into the Big Ten's favor, if anything, at least based on the last 2 years.
Yeah, for sure. And so I guess since NIL has started, they were looking at that. There's been 4 years with NIL, and the SEC with Georgia won the first 2, and then you've had Michigan and Ohio State win the last 2. So, yeah. Tell me your thoughts. What do you think of him?
Yeah, I mean, I love the kid's confidence, right? Like, who knows if that's a persona? It certainly doesn't seem like it. It seems like it's him, which, like, awesome. Like, go for it, dude. Like, let her rip, and see what happens. Like, what's the point? And like he says, like, going into something with kind of a defeated attitude already. Like, so I love that kind of attitude. I don't love it if it turns you into an a-hole.
Right.
But
right.
He didn't come off that way to me. I thought it was weird that he's chewing gum during the freaking podcast. Like, what? Like that? Right. I mean, you learn in like grade school, you don't chew gum in class, like it just makes you look like a doofus in a lot of ways, but he wasn't a doofus. I'm not saying that about him. I just thought it was a bit of a weird touch to the whole thing.
Right.
But yeah, I think, had he had a season that overall reflected the win against Alabama, he'd have some room to talk a little bit more than he did. But he finished one game over 500. As you were saying, lost to Georgia State.
Yep.
I mean, like, got boat raced in a couple of games. I mean, like,
yes,
it's cool South that you
Carolina
got that attitude. And I'm not like, who am I? I'm just Joe Schmo sitting on my couch watching these games, but like, I mean, hey, go for it, dude. If you think you can do it, Nebraska will see you there. You know what I mean? We'll see you in the national title game.
Right. Exactly.
We both finished with the same record. Yeah.
That's where we predicted him last week. Our last podcast episode was Nebraska going 12-0 and making the so something like that. No, I'm with you. No, I do. I like the confidence and everything too. And I thought he was fun, to be as kind of crazy as he was, a little bit last year and everything. And I do like rooting for those, kind of come from, nowhere kind of stories and everything. Cam Ward's the same kind of a story, right?
Yeah,
Cam
they mentioned him.
No offers, no nothing, goes to Incarnate Word, then Washington State, then Miami, and so I get it, and
was he the number 1 draft?
Yeah, he was the number 1 overall pick by the Titans.
That's pretty dang impressive.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know that Diego's quite as athletic as Cam Ward, because I don't think even at this point, Diego is getting a whole lot of draft talk.
Yeah.
In terms of, and it's a strong class coming up. So for him to get drafted, he's going to have to be strong, period, just to be drafted,
Right.
So it'll be interesting,
Yeah.
But he's going to have opportunities to go head to head, like him in South Carolina. Lenora Sellers is getting tons of pub. DJ Lagway of Florida. Yeah. These guys are getting talked about, so he's going to have a chance to go head to head with them and show what he can do. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah. So, I mean, good luck to the kid.
Right.
I don't necessarily agree with his take on the SEC versus the Big Ten. I mean, he thinks the SEC is a juggernaut week in and week out. Sorry, it's not. It's not different than the Big Ten. And if he thinks that, then he's really not looking at. Somebody would tell me, well, you just don't know about the middle of the pack in the SEC and how tough it is. It's like, well, you can say the same thing now for the Big Ten. I mean, Minnesota, Illinois, Iowa, those guys are all a tough victory. They're not a cakewalk, and
exactly.
And so it's more than just Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon's there, USC's there now. All of those teams are friggin' tough. They're tough teams.
Yeah.
And I've always thought the SEC was just sort of even before Nebraska was in the Big Ten, the SEC always just came off as blindly arrogant. Their fans, you know what I mean? They're just, anyway, whatever. So I didn't
No, I
necessarily
would
agree with
agree.
that. Yeah.
I would definitely agree with that. And, I mean, just to piggyback on what you're saying, like one of the other things, the Big Ten is literally a coast to coast league. So SEC teams, once you're in league play, you don't have to travel very far.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to get to all the schools on your, in your geographical footprint fairly easily. Whereas if you're in the Big Ten, you might have, even if you're in Nebraska where you're in the middle of the country, one week you might be playing UCLA, and it's not this year, but like, you play UCLA in the Rose Bowl, and the next week you could end up having to play Rutgers in New Jersey.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bigger, there's more travel, which I think just kind of adds to the difficulty of the
Vigor.
league, if you ask me.
Yeah. One interesting fact that NMMI is also where Zach Bowman played, where he from years ago at Nebraska.
They've turned out some solid players at New Mexico Military and stuff. So
I've been down there. It's in Roswell. Roswell's such a weird, interesting town. They have gigantic alien statues all over the place. Like they lean in hard to their.
Yeah, we went there.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we went there. Yeah. We in fact stayed in Roswell one night, and it was
it's a funny
wild
place.
Yeah, it really is. And then we did the whole the museum or whatever in Roswell and stuff. Which was actually, like, I'll be honest with you, I was a little surprised at how good of a museum it was. I thought maybe it would be kind of a joke, and it was not. There was legit, like, it felt like you were in a real museum, like giving you real stuff. So that was an interesting thing. But yeah, Roswell's an interesting town. And I remember driving past the New Mexico Military Institute and seeing the campus and the stadium and stuff as we were going through town. So very interesting place.
Yeah. It's a nice campus. They take good care of it, and they invest in it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
It would be fascinating to do a segment on alien sightings and all of the like information that's out on some of that, like
especially nowadays, right? Now that they've like declassified a bunch of stuff and everything, would be very interesting.
Did you hear on, just real quickly, on Heard At with Damon Benning and Ravi? They did a whole segment with this lady who has like devoted her life to Bigfoot, and just was just like 2 days ago. And like all of the like encounters that she's had, or she's saying she's had with Bigfoot and like Bigfoot families. I couldn't listen to the whole thing because I had to go, but like I was like, holy crap, she's not just talking about like Bigfoot lore. What? She's actually like, oh, yeah, there was a dad and there was a mom and they had kids. We think they were twins. And I'm like, this would be amazing. Like this would be the best thing I have ever seen in my entire life if this was right. I mean, every time I go on a road trip, if I'm in the mountains or I'm somewhere out in the country on a road trip, I am always expecting to see Bigfoot. And I'm always pissed when I don't. And I try to get the kids to look for Bigfoot. They always just think I'm an idiot, but I swear he's real and I want to find him one of these days. So maybe I should talk to that lady because
you should.
It was pretty dang fascinating.
Talk to her.
Yeah,
that is hilarious.
Yeah, it's funny.
That is awesome. And on that note, so we had a discussion here amongst us brothers, and we thought it would be a cool idea because a lot of times the media and the fans simply focus on the negative that goes on with athletics. So you hear about the times the guys get busted for doing something stupid or being involved in something illegal or whatever, but you almost never, unless it's like the one segment on game day or something, on Saturdays in the fall, you almost never hear about the really cool stories. So we thought that every 2 weeks on the podcast, we would spend 5 minutes talking about, something we saw or somebody that we saw that was an athlete or somehow related to the sports world doing something good. And it was brought up because I saw a post, it was on Facebook, and I have not been able to fully confirm this, but it kind of led to, I confirmed other stuff. So we're confirmed
still good. Something else. Confirmed I'm hungry right now.
But it led me down, looking. So anyway, the story was about Dansby Swanson, who's the shortstop, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Not
you are correct.
Base, shortstop for the Chicago Cubs. And the story on Facebook was that he ate at a diner on, like the lady let him eat using school points or something while he was in college or whatever. And he didn't have a lot of money. And so she allowed him to eat lunch there. And he then, he
and like rack up a tab, like she didn't make him pay right away. Is like
exactly
you can pay me when you got it kind of thing.
Right, exactly. And so apparently he found out that she was about to close the restaurant because of running out of money or etc. And he apparently bought it. And then instead of reopening it to the public, he has, funded it so that it feeds the homeless in the area and stuff, something like 120 meals a day. Now, when I went digging for that to verify it, because it was a Facebook post, and I'm always a little bit leery of those things, I didn't necessarily find that story. However, that being said, Dansby Swanson is definitely does some amazing things. So he has a clothing brand that he co-founded called All Things Loyal. From every item that gets sold, he supports nonprofits for local youth programs and such in Atlanta, where he's from. So that's one thing. If you want to visit All Things Loyal to browse and purchase apparel, you can do that. He has another one called Good Sports that is a nonprofit that provides sports equipment and financial support to underprivileged young athletes, again, mostly in Atlanta. You can go to the Good Sports Inc. website if you want to find out how to get involved there. And then the coolest thing was that he pledged all of his earnings from, I believe it's this season. Yes. So Swanson and his wife Mallory have publicly pledged to donate all of his season bonuses, winnings, and sponsorship revenue toward charities combating homelessness and supporting youth and mental health programs. Nice. That it was on the Daily Sporting News, which is an old source that has been around a while, so I trust it. They have not announced specifically how they're going to distribute the funds, etc., but they have announced that, so that is a legit thing. So pretty much everything he's earning outside of his base salary, I believe, he's donating. At least that's how I'm reading it. And then there's two other things he's involved in. One's called the Cheat Code Foundation, which focuses on reducing mental health stigma and increases access to support in underserved communities. And the health initiatives with Wellstar Foundation, which is in Cobb County, Georgia. He is promoting healthcare access with Wellstar. So he's definitely a guy who's out doing work, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So
and he's going to be a dad for the first time.
Yeah. Him and Mallory are supposed to be having a child pretty soon, isn't she? Pretty far along. So
something like that to announce it, I would guess so. By the way, when you say brava, that's for a girl. You say bravo to a guy.
I am not on my game today. Let's just put it that way. Holy cow.
I never knew that until Heidi told me, because I was yelling bravo to some woman performing, and she was like, it's bravo.
Nice. See, that's what happens when you have a smart wife or girlfriend. I'm sure that Sarah would have corrected me as well had she heard me doing that. She'd been like, dude, pay attention.
Stupid.
So again, this episode is brought to you by HelmetNation, creators of fully custom football helmets for youth teams, high schools, small colleges, military units, other first responders. These aren't toys. They're built on authentic Rydell shells with professional grade decals. If you got a team or brand that needs to look sharp, HelmetNation can make it happen. Proudly veteran owned and built for those who take pride in their gear. Visit HelmetNation.com and bring your helmet idea to life. You can also keep an eye on our YouTube channel for HelmetNation YouTube, as we will be doing in the coming weeks. So we'll be showing you the helmets we're doing for the Sun Belt Conference currently. We are also doing helmets for the Missouri Valley Conference and several other different groups. So there's a lot coming on that channel. So now,
just out of curiosity, when you show this on YouTube, do you put in like an actual commercial of the products that you've made?
Not yet, but that will be something that hopefully down the road I'll be able to do.
Yeah. Like keep the voiceover and just show like some of the actual products.
You can. I just haven't quite figured out all the steps yet in terms of adding that to the thing. There's a lot of cool stuff. I'm just, I'm the old dog now in technology, so I'm trying to learn it all, and it's fascinating. I really enjoy it. Like, it's fun to do. Yeah. But I don't have all the key stuff down there. I don't think my brain works like techie guys' brains work. So I have to teach myself literally.
No, I get it. One last thing on Dansby Swanson. I took Will to a spring game in Mesa, and we saw him. Will got autographs from Nico Horner. This wasn't this spring, it was last spring. So guys like Jan Gomes and Patrick Wisdom and stuff were still there. Those two signed a ball for him, and we saw Dansby Swanson. Like a lot of those bigger guys will just avoid autographs like the plague, which kind of sucks. But we saw him walking in, and you could tell he just avoided, right? Like
Mhm.
somebody else yelled for him, Dansby, come sign autographs, and we're all like standing behind the fence, like we're refugees in a holding cell or something, like holding out a ball. Please, sir, please sign this for me, sir. And I feel
Please.
like an idiot as a 45-year-old dude. Like this kid could be my kid practically. And I'm trying to show him like, Will's right here. I swear there's a kid here. It's not just me as a weirdo. I'm not just like watching you through the bushes. He like wouldn't even hardly acknowledge it. He like waved and I was like, oh, dude, come on, man.
Yeah.
That part's always a bit of a bummer, but I think it's awesome that he's doing that work. So I'm glad he is.
I should have. I mean, if they're ever around each other again, Lordy, my kids are always gone. But Kieran, when she was Will's age and younger, developed the most insane way of getting autographs that was awesome. So, and
Emma
she
was pretty
came
good
up
at
with it on her own. So we were at an AFL football game, arena football game. And
Mm-hmm.
you know how they come out and they sign autographs afterwards after the game as required.
That's cool.
And so we were in this line. And so what Kieran was doing was she would scoot her foot forward until the adult in front of her stepped on it. And then they would go, oh, I'm sorry. And then she'd be like, it's okay, as she stepped forward in front of them. And so then she would scoot her foot forward again until the next person stepped on it. So I'm like at the back of the line because she's sitting there moving up and she got like, I think she got almost the entire team the first time she ever tried it. Like it was insane.
Hilarious.
She was
That's
working
hilarious.
it. So
that's so funny. Well, so on my autographed baseballs back here, I've
nice
got
catch,
Ben's.
by the way.
Yeah. I almost said I had to add the base.
Yes.
Otherwise it would have been weird. But like I can't tell which one it is just by waggling my finger like a weirdo. But one of them has Ben Zobrist and Anthony Rizzo on it from the 2016 team, and Emma's the one who got those. We were at the spring training after in the 2017 season, and no, it might have been leading up to because it's on a World Series ball, so it had to be the spring training after. And she didn't do that but she kind of got to the front, and they like as a girl fan, like a young girl, a kid, they wanted to sign those much more than they did for the weirdos who are there to like get the collectible and sell it, and so. Right. They were super awesome. And Will was tiny and he had his adorable little blue glasses. And so Ben Zobrist, who's like 6'4", he's signing autographs, and Will's tiny trying to hold up this little ball. He's like 4 or 5. Right. And Ben looks around. He's like, okay, is there anybody else? And Will is so small and short. He didn't see him right at his feet. I was like, hey, Ben, will you sign his? And Will's like holding it. He's just the coolest guy. Like it was so nice. He was so happy to sign it for him and just like wanted to make sure all the kids were signed and taken care of. It was super cool. Like I love that kind of thing with the professional athletes anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. When they do that, it's awesome. Yeah.
It's kind of heartwarming when they're, and Nico was that same way. Like this last year, Nico was so cool to sign the ball for Will, and it's so much fun. Anyway.
It's interesting. I'd be curious, like people, like if there was a way to like sort of track experiences in terms of like finding out, because like I wonder if the guys who have always been destined for it, like they like everybody knew along the way this guy's going to the majors, like this guy, and they're getting the attention all the time, or this guy's going to go to the NFL. I wonder if those guys tend to be a little different than the guys who are like, I worked my butt off to get here. Like I'm in this arena for 3 years, 5 years, like whatever, you know what I mean? Like I'm gonna hang on as long as I can, but like while I'm here, I'm gonna love every moment and give these kids, you know what I mean? I just wonder if there's something to that. And I wonder if because the other, like for instance, like with Caitlin Clark and her rise to fame as with women's basketball, I know that she takes a lot of time to autograph stuff. And I wonder if it's because she realizes that like, it's not been,
easy.
Yeah, it's not been an easy thing. And that when she was first at Iowa, nobody paid attention, and it's now all of a sudden people are paying attention now. So I've got to still do things to keep those fans coming. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm curious about that. It's an interesting thing.
I mean, I think there's definitely something to be said for the athletes who just kind of like remember where they came from, whether they were natural top athlete from the beginning or not, you hope that they would. I mean, I think of people like Shaquille O'Neal, and I don't know all of his backstory, but he seemed pretty destined from the beginning
for sure
to make it to the NBA, and he's been nothing but like one of the most charitable, philanthropic guys.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the stuff that he does for underprivileged people is just like
it's unreal.
It's incredible, and
Yeah.
it's not small gestures either. I mean, he does a lot.
No,
Anyway.
he's not buying like somebody a snow cone as they leave out of Walmart. He's like buying the entire toy section.
Yeah.
And then dropping it off somewhere or whatever, or, and then, speaking of Shaq specifically, like one of the coolest things he ever did was, and I don't know how popular they ever became or whatever, but his shoes that he made on an off-brand label just so that they could be cheap, so the kids could afford them. I thought that was one of the coolest things ever. Like, I just thought, wow, what a really cool thing to do. And I've always thought, like, the athletes should like, I think not should. I don't want to tell somebody how they should do something, but
I know what you mean.
But I've always thought, like, what a cool idea it would be, like, if you're Jordan or you're like, Steph Curry or something right now, and you have your next shoes coming out, keep your ones that are the high end ones. Fine. Like, they've got a market. You've got a reason you do that. But wouldn't it be cool if they also worked with their manufacturer, whoever it is, because I think Curry's with Under Armour or something like that, and you came up with a shoe that you specifically are going to sell cheap? Like, you know what I'm saying? Not make it cheap, but make one that you're going to sell cheap so that more people can have it. You know what I'm saying? Like make it different than your top one. Okay. Don't try to, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't give away the farm, but like, I just think that'd be a cool idea, like have a lower tier option so that people can feel like they have something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
or just like reduce the price of the previous year's line or something like that, like, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that'd be way cool. I don't know how deep we'll get into this, but do you want to kind of go over this? Like, did you get a chance to read anything up on it?
Yeah,
like,
I read on it. I mean, I don't think that I can even come close to fully understanding or grasping the ramifications of this. Just some of my observations was that, one, how on earth are you going to divvy up that back pay? It's like almost $3 billion in back pay.
Right.
Is this to every single athlete? Is this just D1? Is this just certain sports? I mean, like, how are you going to do that?
They've said that.
Yeah, I'm sure they have somewhere. Just, I can't imagine that working out very well. Like over 10 years too. No. Like what?
But that's why we already have a lawsuit that's at least one that I know of that is from 8 female athletes who are claiming that they're, not going to get a fair amount out of the settlement. Because and that it should be following Title IX, like
everything else,
guidelines or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the settlement that they've said, so out of the 2.8, 75% is going to go to football players for the years that are included. 10 to 15%, or 10, it's small, like it's 10%, whatever. I mean, if it's anyway, it's like 75, and then 10 or 15% to men's basketball, then another like 5% to women's basketball, and then the rest to Olympic sports. And that's how it's going to get divided up. And I was really curious when I first heard about it, being like, why, I think it was either 2016 or 2017, why there? Well, apparently that's the statute of limitations. So that's as far back as they can go. 10 years from when they're starting the new.
I mean, that's
so if you were an NCAA athlete or a football player in 15, you don't get squat. If you were in 2016 as a football player, you might get something. And how you're going to, I mean, even then, once you divide it up and everything, these people will probably get like $10 checks, like it'll be interesting.
I thought it was interesting that the NCAA as the organization is on the hook for 60% of that or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that could seriously, I mean, from what I was reading, that's going to be a difficult number for them to reach. Like that's going to hamper their budgets. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all if they are sort of like have their hands tied behind their back a little bit as far as some of their power going forward.
For sure.
Like Andrew said in our sort of side conversations, or maybe it was you, that like surprised that they survived at all.
Right.
I mean, they seem pretty, I don't want to say like gutless, but like I don't know, like the NCAA has just dwindled in power and influence and authority over the last 15, 20 years to the point where some of its existence doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Right.
this whole thing like just makes me feel like why it's attached to the educational aspects of school at all.
Right.
Like fine, we've talked about this too. Like fine, use the names just because they're there and they're established. Use the schools as sort of the identity, but like you're really let's hopefully finally we can get rid of this facade that they are student athletes first. Give me a break.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I don't I don't know. I have kind of mixed thoughts on the idea of them becoming employees of the institution. If that's the case, then you really could do away with all of the educational expectations entirely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't really understand why the arbitrary $20 million cap. I don't, at least it seems arbitrary. I don't know
It's
if there was
22% of the average group, or not group, the Power
athletic
Four.
departments.
It's 22% of the average Power Four athletic department's revenue.
So why did they pick 22%?
I don't know. It's random.
That part is weird to me. Like there's an aspect
And you have
of this
to opt into this. You can be a team, so you could be a group of 5 team, and you could opt in and attempt to make a go at it, or you could be a group of 5 team and say we're not doing it, and then you just operate the way you always have.
But then you can offer whatever you want for NIL if you've got it, right?
Yes, you could add, you could offer that, but you're going to still be able to do that anyway. Like you're going to be able to do regular NIL stuff. Only now the difference is all the NIL deals have to go through a clearinghouse, so that if anything over $600 a month has to go through this clearinghouse and get approved as an actual NIL deal where they're going to judge fair market value for what's being paid. So in other words, if I'm a local air conditioning company and I want to have whatever that kid's name was, who was at Nebraska, frozen or ice cold or the coldest
yes. Crawford.
So if I want to pay him an NIL deal, I can't just, somehow have money and pay him $1 million. I have to get fair market value for what he's going to do for me. So they'll judge that according to them. And it's going to be run by that firm, Deloitte.
Yeah. I mean, clearly they have an interest in being a part of this. Like that,
for sure, because they're going to be making a percentage off of that.
Billions of dollars.
Even if they make like less than 1% off of every deal done, they're going to be just rolling in money.
Ugh. That's another aspect that just like makes me kind of sick.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just like getting a defense contract. Like, give me a freaking break. Like now you're an interested party. I mean, right. like now you're going to have lobbyists who are going to be lobbying Congress to, change the rules to fit what will help Deloitte more. Right. You know what I mean? Like that, that part of it just kind of pisses me off. It's like, no, you're just introducing new problems. That's all you're doing.
Right.
And why the arbitrary number of 105 on the roster? You know what I mean?
Yes, I don't like that either. And what I don't like about it that doesn't make any sense to me is why wouldn't you, like again, using the walk-on program as a part of it, why wouldn't you just say, okay, you can have 105 on the roster that you could pay out of that $20 million. If you want to have more than that, then those kids are walk-ons and understand they're not getting paid unless they get onto the 105 roster. So
like they get an NIL deal, right?
Or yes, exactly. Which if they're not on the 105, most of them probably aren't going to get some kind of NIL deal because who's going to pay them to do what? Just wear a Nebraska uniform, big deal.
Yeah, but still, it's like at least give them the option, give them the
for sure, and that is all still possible. But so I don't understand why that either, because I'm just like, well, just let the kids, because it's the same thing. It gives your coaches the depth that they want if you can get the kids to come there, and then it gives a kid a chance to say, hey, I can still make it, and I can do it at the school I want to go to, and live that dream. And if not, then I'm going to go somewhere else and play. But you're not losing anything because you're not on that 105 roster anyway. So it's a weird thing that they can't do that. But rather than continuing to go there, let me run this idea by you, because I had this thought, and my son Aaron thinks I'm nuts and that it can't work. So
two things can be true at once.
Well, that is true. So what did you think of this? Using exactly what we were talking about earlier, the English Football League, as an example. What if, rather than say the football team specific, let's just focus on football because it's the biggest sport, it's the biggest moneymaker. So rather than the football team being this amateur collegiate thing. The football team becomes owned by the university. Now, the reason in my mind that we do that is because the infrastructure is already there. So rather than trying to create separate teams to fill in the different levels of like the EFL, right? You just go with the universities that already have infrastructure there, all the way down to Division III schools, because they have football fields, almost all of them. So you just make the university own the football team. Now, whether or not the guys want to go to school or whatever, you can work that deal out later as to whether or not they want to be a student, etc. But you just start, and then you have the NFL is the EPL, the Premier League. You have your next league, whether it's the Power Four, or if you even want to just make it like you pick 64 teams and that's going to be your level, that becomes your championship league. Mm-hmm. Then you have Division FCS, what's now FCS becomes your League One. Mm-hmm. Division Two becomes League Two. And then
so
Division
each school has each tier?
Yes. Well, no, not each school. The schools that are currently in those spots are in that level. And then you can move up. So let's say you are, for example, where I went to school, Puget Sound would be a Division III thing. So it would start where Wrexham was at. And if it wanted to get up into the English Premier League, it does whatever it has to do to get promoted. And so you have promotion and relegation, just like, and instead of the football team being this piece of the university, it's like the university owns it. Yeah. And then runs it like a business, which they're doing anyway. Like, so the majority of this is being done anyway. Yeah. I just thought that would be a fascinating way. I don't know. I'm not saying it would be easy to just flip over and do this, that there would be no, debates or that it's even possible. I just thought you have infrastructure already built and you have levels already in place. Yeah. Why not just start with that?
Yeah, I think it's super cool. I love the promotion relegation idea. Like everything matters at that point that you do throughout the year. I know that there's going to be traditionalists who would hate that idea. For sure. And they love the bowl games as they are. They love the conferences and this and that. And I get that. I've always thought that I've actually never really liked the conferences because each conference sets up their schedules differently. Mm-hmm. When you look at the SEC, and they've always got a patsy the end of the year. You know, like that's the biggest chicken thing in the world to me.
And they only play 8 league games.
Yes, they only play 8 league games. Like all of that stuff is stupid. Right. And so if you can never have a clear-cut debate about it'll always be a debate, I should say, about which is a better conference, and it'll never be solvable because of this stupidity in how they separate. They're each their own entity. So in that sense, I love the idea of sort of making all of those teams that are, maybe the group of the Power Four or whatever, sort of on the same level, or maybe it'd be the Power Two. I don't know. Right. That's sort of where I would tend to think. Yeah. I think the intrigue could start to rival the NFL. At first, I thought you were thinking like the NFL would be associated with these schools. Well, so I don't think the NFL would never let that happen.
Not associated, but like if you're doing it top to bottom, then you take the 2 worst teams in the NFL or 3 and they get relegated.
That would be fascinating. It'll never happen.
No, I totally agree.
No, I think if you set up the system you're describing without the NFL is its own thing, sort of it's like elite whatever, that kids are still trying to get to.
Right.
The hard part is that to do that, you would really actually have to get rid of the student aspect of this because those players are going, freshmen in college,
for sure.
Sophomore,
and they could, in the middle of the season, they could end up getting promoted or something. You know what I mean? Like middle of the season.
Well, I mean, those kids are graduating too. Like, and then their eligibility runs out. So you'd have to address that issue somehow.
Well, that's just the thing. It would become something where maybe you're not like, that's why I say you're only a student if you want to be a student. Otherwise you're in the system and you're playing for the team. You could be 40 years old and playing for Nebraska if you're on that level. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like if you're that good, but you can't quite make it to the NFL, you just keep going. Like, so there'd almost be probably a little bit less turnover with the colleges, which I don't know how that would I don't know how
That'd be
people would
interesting.
like that. You know what I mean? Like, I get it, because I think that's one of the nostalgic things about the college is that the names change every year. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have
Yeah.
some guys come in and leave. And while you have a little bit of that, you have far more stable rosters. Like, you can look at the Philadelphia Eagles or any team in the NFL and know who's going to be on the roster for the next couple of years versus the guys who have like 1 year until their contract's up or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, that would be certainly one of the sticking points they'd have to figure out. The other issue might be the fact that there's just not enough volume of games to determine like who would be promoted and relegated. Because what if you had,
Yeah.
5 teams out of 64 that played, schedules and then all ended up, whatever, like ended up the
Even.
same record basically. So you'd have to create some kind of a scoring system like they have in English football or whatever. I don't know if you want to go playing ties. I don't, whatever, but like, maybe you get fewer points for winning in overtime like they do in hockey.
Yeah, I think a point system like that could work. Back to your point about the player turnover and stuff, it could be, I think you could do it either way, because if you kept that 40-year-old player, that'd be like keeping the Paul Mullins of Wrexham as they advance, and sort of he's loved, right? He's loved by the community. He's given his blood, sweat, and tears, and you don't really want to see him go, but you have to acknowledge that like there's got to be a talent upgrade. But so maybe there is a space for him if you did allow it that way. The other option would be that it would certainly add intrigue, keeping them as their grades towards like their grade level towards their graduation, because then like every year the risk of relegation, or at least like a big change in the order, goes up just based on who your graduating class is.
Right.
That would be pretty dang fascinating, because you could have a championship team one year and then next year you're relegated. If you don't have the recruiting to back up. Yeah, that'd be a fascinating. That'd be pretty
It's
dang
mostly
interesting.
a mental exercise, because I think Americans, by and large,
Never
would
gonna go it.
probably, crap themselves before they'd be willing to allow for a relegation, kind of thing. I have found over the years, like, that's a fascinating part, and I think that it makes the end of the season better for soccer, because like in the English leagues and for that matter, any of the leagues in the world, because I think they all pretty much operate off of a relegation promotion system at this point. Like, except for here in the US, you don't get promoted from the USL into the MSL, or MLS.
Yeah.
And stuff. But, for the most part, I think it'd be fascinating. And that's the thing. That's why that's why I would say that you simply make the university own the team rather than, which they kind of do now. But what I mean is that it has nothing to do with academics anymore. Because if we're there anyway, and everybody's saying this is the end of amateurism, well, then fine. Then employ the people that you need to employ to get you to the next level, to be promoted. You know what I'm saying? To get to that power, that championship league level, that power 4 level. And then, if you're in that power 4 level and your guys end up getting taken into the NFL and now they're playing at the top of the top, then you've got to find people to, keep yourself,
replace them.
Where you're
keep
at
yourself
and
relevant.
stuff. So, it's an interesting, I don't know. I just thought it'd be an interesting thought in terms of if we're getting rid of amateurism, then
just
make it all professional. Lean into it and make it all professional. From because that's one of the things that they're talking about with Wrexham is building the academy, so that they've got kids that are feeder to the team. Do the same thing. Like, figure out the academies, get these kids doing whatever. And I don't know how that would affect, obviously the big thing is like to wholesale change everything like that. Like all the, like women's basketball, women's bowling, Nebraska's women's bowling
I don't know that
team.
you
Like, I don't know how you would be able to do it with all that. And I don't know how that system, like, I don't know, maybe the Olympic sports don't do that in England or other places either. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just basketball, the biggies.
Yeah. I think this would just be football. Like when I think of what you're saying, I think of just football.
Right.
And I think that the part that becomes a little bit weird to me, and I don't know how you'd sort this out, is that like those universities are getting a ton of tax dollars, and you'd have to make this a totally separate entity from that. And you're just simply using brand identity at that point.
Right.
But yeah, because those universities are supposed to be, getting funded by tax
Right.
dollars and stuff
And
like
they,
that. And
you
you
know,
got to
the
keep that
academic
separate.
part and the rest of the, and maybe the rest of the sports all continue to be operated in the way that they are now on the collegiate level. But, you know, you make football separate and then you run it like it's, so you've got to find sponsors to sponsor Husker football, and you've got to find, you know, donors and people who want to buy the boxes and everything else, and which they already do to some degree. Like all that's already somewhat in place, you know. It just depends on who you've got that you're willing to or who's willing to give you money. So
you know. It's starting to get dark in here. I got to turn on a light or something.
Well, I think it would be if we can figure out what's up with Andrew for next time.
Just quit. He just quit.
He's just like, I'm out.
F it. I don't even care anymore.
I don't care.
Screw those guys.
But we can save this and kind of go through it a little bit more, right? Go through it a little bit more on the next one.
Yeah.
So we can kind of delve into the stuff a little bit, because I'd love to hear his take on a couple of things. I wouldn't mind hearing his take on Diego, even though that'll be a week and a half old at that point and stuff, but still. And then his take on this. I say we just wrap it right now. So
I think that's
if you like today's episode, give us a like, follow, drop a comment. We're on YouTube. We're hopefully going to be on Spotify, Apple, and others shortly. And then you can follow us on Instagram at Brothers Trippin Pod. We will hopefully be expanding what we're posting there. Be sure to follow our sponsor, HelmetNation, as well on Instagram, YouTube, HelmetNation.com. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with more takes, more stories.